Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, my deepest apologies. I could not get this thing running. I had a few issues with the recording. My microphone was also kind of damaged. And so I decided to do it old school. I got the regular microphone, which is not of a high quality one, and decided to do a little, I would say, backtracking. I thought I'd still do chapter 7 because if I did chapter 8 online and postponed it, it wouldn't be right. So I wanted to keep the pace. So I'll be sending this out as soon as possible as it's uploaded. And do not worry, there won't be an assignment right away on this. It will be a very small one. If it is, it'll probably be in groups. So for now, don't think too much about it. But this chapter is very essential, so brace yourself. It'll be pretty long. You can, of course, read the book. However, I'll try to, what do you call it, input as many as examples as possible because I got a hold of great some examples as before. But, you know, as they say, screw that. Anyways, this is going to be about segmentation, targeting, and positioning. This is one of the most essential chapters, just like chapter number 5 being the soul of marketing. Chapter number 7 is the kidney. Uh, yeah, I know. But when I say kidney, it kind of flushes out all the bad stuff. Why I say that is because people constantly, when they think about marketing, they jump to product sales and advertising. No, it's essentially about understanding first your consumer and then targeting the right type of consumer and also positioning your ideology of your perfect solution towards that customer segment. So without further ado, let me present to you the first part. So it's divided, even though it's called STP, which stands for segmentation, targeting, and positioning, the word P can also mean differentiation and positioning. But don't worry too much. The whole idea behind this is to target the value for the customers that we are going after. And the formula for value has always been the same thing. It's the total perceived benefit minus total perceived cost. In some cases, for branding, they say it in a different way. They say total perceived benefit divided by total perceived cost. Either way, the value has to be larger. Even if it's a ratio, it has to be a larger one than the denominator. So if the value is higher, that means the benefits are higher. Okay, so let me start with segmentation and then we'll move on to targeting. So segmentation requires you to divide your market. Let's say you're in the fashion luxury business and you're selling, I would say premier, or I wouldn't say, let's say premium, let's say luxury and clothing to a certain type of segment in the industry. But how can you further divide that industry? So they can be divided according to a few characteristics. They can be divided according to their behavior, geographically, or even by through the psychographics. And this is a neat way of, I would say, heterogenizing your market segments rather than homogenizing them. Because the essential part about marketing is we move away from mass marketing to more targeted marketing. The better the niche that or well-defined niche will lead to higher profits. Okay, so let's move ahead and explore further that we will only be doing consumer markets and not business markets. It's because business market is a totally different study. That's on chapter number 6, and we don't cover it in principles of marketing. However, if you have any advanced courses like personal selling and negotiation, or even B2B marketing, you can learn those things. And international marketing, I will not be touching too much upon it because we have a class at ABS, which is called International Marketing. But I will be talking about requirements for effective segmentation. So this is just the starting part. You can divide your market into 4 types of segments. Essentially, the word demographic incorporates geographic and psychographic segmentation too. But behavior segmentation, we studied a bit about it in chapter 5. That is a cultural aspect, the social aspect, and all those things. Psychographics are part of that, which we spoke about AOIs and all those things. Okay, so without further ado, let's see what is a geographic segment. It means you can divide your market regionally. Just like if you are living in Paris, you've noticed Paris has different quartiers, or I would say different arrondissements. And according to their postal code, the income, I wouldn't say the income, but the income level and the lifestyle of the people in these various quartiers also differs. Okay, if you go to the northern parts such as Barbès, Rochechouart, or Stalingrad, you'll see there are a lot of immigrants who are coming from basically lower or middle lower income. But if you go towards Trocadero and all those places, you'll see a lot of higher income people in segmentation, and their living standards are much more different. And of course, accordingly, you'll see the type of products and services being marketed over there are not the same to each other, even though they're in the Parisian region. And or we can say I'm going to Bretagne, where there's a lot of crêperie, there are crepes made of apple cider, which are famous for. Or if you go to Normandy side, you'll see have a lot of fish and seafood. If you go to Marseille, well, there's all pizza in Nice and Marseille, I guess. Anyways, I'm hungry. So geographic segmentation divides the market into different geographical units, such as nations, regions, states, counties, cities, or even neighborhoods. Postal codes do matter. Okay. Uh, Moving ahead. Sorry again for rushing you guys through this. I'm just a little, what's the word? Frustrated that my video could not be uploaded after working so much on it and creating new content. What the hell? Who cares now, right? Let's get through this. But demographic segmentation, you studied a bit about this in chapter number 3, which was marketing environment. And this divides the market into segment based on variables such as age, life cycle stage, gender, income, occupation, some things that are available in, I would say, the Bureau of Statistics. After the, I would say, the government conducts a census and they collect this information from various households. It's also good for the government in a way that they can, let's say, if the government owns certain institutes like they provide electricity. So it's not a privatized company, but it's a government-owned subsidy. It's not an autonomous body, or providing water to you. They can somehow understand if you are living with a family of 5, how much water or electricity you would need to consume. And that way they can also say the rates might differ, they can be bracketed, or they can even give you a subscription. For example, in my household, we get water at a subscription and not at a consumption rate. So that can also make a difference. What about education in different regions or no, demographically speaking? For example, it's very true. We've heard this argument before that STEM, scientific, technical, engineering, mathematic type schools, they have more boys as per girls. But if you go to communication type schools or business or even art schools, you have more girls over there. Now, I'm not stating this as a fact, but it's this observable data. And even religions matter. For example, if certain parts of your certain country, for example, like the U.S., it has a Catholic belt. People are very Christian over there. You go to Indonesia, people practice Islam, I would say in majority. Even there was a joke I shared. Well, it's not a joke, it happened. I think the foreign minister, trade minister of Russia was talking about exporting pork, and he mentions that we can export to Asian countries like Japan, South Korea, and then he said Indonesia. And Putin, yes, Putin, Vladimir Putin, the president of USSR, sorry, not USSR, Russia, USSR doesn't exist. He said, Indonesia is a Muslim country. How the hell are you going to export pork over there? And he starts laughing. It's kind of funny too because it's as even as a not just a marketer but as a government minister, you should be aware of these things. Yes, you can divide your market separately too, according to that. For example, in Paris, some people are Jewish, so they eat kosher food. Muslim people eat halal food, but that's religion. What about income? Through income, some people have to get subsidized food, so they get ticket resto from their companies. And once again, it seems pretty obvious, but mostly when people start off dividing the market, they need to think about how the profile can become attractive to the business as well. Moving ahead. Now I'm already 9 minutes down. I don't know I talked that much. Anyway, segmenting consumer markets. You can market segment according to age and life cycle stage segments. You can, for example, students, right? You guys are students, so doesn't matter what age you are. For the next 4 years or even maybe 5 years, you'll remain a student, and maybe you're working partially, but your focuses, or I would say your foci, will be different than someone who has a professional lifestyle or who is married with and who has children. It doesn't matter. The age does have an impact, but more so we say it's a life cycle part. Are you in the starting off of your life? Are you settling down in your life? So the product range, for example, if you are getting insurance as a student will not be the same insurance you'll get as an older person. And older people, it gets much more difficult to get health insurance because the premium gets higher and higher because they're not able to pay for it. And I talked about gender segmentation before as for in terms of STEM schools and income segmentation as well. All this is covered in the book, but think about gender segmentation even according to the type of movies you watch. To be cliched, let's talk about, rom-coms or romantic comedy. I don't think so. Uh, Boys like to watch that. Maybe they do, but in general, if you see the statistics, it's not that high. And or there's a cute joke out there. I was reading a comic strip, and this husband and wife, they have small kids. What was the comic called? I think it was called Rose's Rose. And the mother says to the husband, they're at a toy store, saying, "Do you notice that all the girl toys are in pink color and they're all dolls to play with? And do you notice the boys are all about violence and they're army soldiers and etc. etc. What do you make of this?" The man says very sheepishly that boys' toys are cooler. And then she screams at him and says, "No, you idiot, it's sexist stereotypes," which is also kind of wrong, but for the marketers, it works. If you have access to Netflix, I urge you to watch this documentary called The Toys That Made Us. In the season one, episode two, they talk about Barbie. And I was very shocked that the person who created Barbie, the actual doll, was actually a male rocket scientist and engineer. And he worked for the woman and he came up with the idea of Barbie. And it is just phenomenal. Okay, moving ahead to the next slide. Psychographic segmentation. If you studied in chapter 5, we talk about psychographic divides the market into different segments based on social classes, lifestyle, personality characteristics, attitudes, interests, and opinions, or values, attitude, and lifestyle. Uh, Take, for example, the French lifestyle. When you wake up in the morning, you probably have a cafe and a croissant because, life is fast. I read this, saw this magnet somewhere, and it said, Metro, Boulot, Café. So that means you take the metro, you go to work, and you have a coffee. Whereas if you are American or even British, you wake up in the morning, you have a heavy breakfast, but you probably have a very short lunch. But French people have a longer lunch, but that's the lifestyle. So if you notice, even the cafe business, Starbucks is not very prominent, or neither Dunkin' Donuts or Costco, Costa. They're not very prominent in our in Parisian regions, or even I would say in France. It's because the lifestyle does not exist for that. They like going to their local boulangerie to buy their, I would say, their pain, baguette, and all those things, and maybe their local brasserie as well to get a cafe. For them, it's not a big deal, but it also impacts the consumer behavior and the buying behavior of regular consumers. Moving ahead. Now, behavioral segmentation divides a market into segment based on knowledge the consumers have about your brand or your product or service, the attitudes or the gut feelings they feel towards your brand, hate, love, indifference, or excitement, and maybe they're familiar how they can use your product. For example, I was unfamiliar how to use a smartphone, but I was having a little difficulty transitioning from a regular old Nokia to a Samsung. But with time I learned, and then after that, getting a new smartphone, I bought quite a few, mainly Android. It wasn't that difficult, but if I transitioned, once I transitioned to an iPhone, it was a nightmare for me. I'm not saying iPhones are bad, but in general, it was difficult because I learned how to deal with Androids. But initially, I know it wasn't that different because it has the same concept of swiping left, right, pinch, and zoom. So this is also what matters when people get comfortable with using a certain type of product or service. And what are the responses to a product? Let's say, for example, when the iPhone 10 came out, people generally excited. So that is also a response. Or how does it elicit a response from you, like perfume? Now, perfumes have sensation that like of smell, and they can have some sort of deep psychological or nostalgic effect. They can remind you of pleasant moments. Take, for example, even food. If food tastes delicious, it can calm a person's soul, which is true for many people because they love eating food. So that is behind what we call behavioral segmentation. Moving to the next slide. It's also about, I would say, frequency, and in terms of usage. Let's say, do you, for example, here they have an example of Schwinn, which I think is a bicycle company. I'm not too sure about that. It looks like a mountain bike mixed with a city bike. I don't really care, actually. But how are you in a, okay, what's the occasion that you are riding a bike? Are you a frequent buyer? What are the benefits that you seek in biking? Are you just looking for commuting or exercising? When we say occasion, it could be a special event. Then the user status. Are you an expert at mountain biking or racing, or just a casual biker? What do you use it rate? Do you use it just for the weekends, or do you use it for daily commute? And what is your loyalty status? Will you not buy another brand? Are you serious about what you own? Like me, I'm a very loyal ASUS brand owner. I love the ASUS products. I know they're not the best out there, but my loyalty status because I've bought them on many occasions, and I'm very comfortable using them. Knock on wood. I hope nothing bad happens to my ASUS. Anyways, moving ahead. Now, we won't be doing this, the Experian Mosaic. It's not very, I would say, necessary, but what you should focus on, what we call multiple segmentation, is used to identify smaller, better defined target groups. This is also called, going deeply into the grain of further heterogenizing your brand. For example, you could put multiple segmentation in the sense of geographic, uh, psychographic, demographics, and even behavior, and find the best niche possible. Now be careful, this is not very relevant if your brand cannot serve a very tight segment. But let's say in terms of music, it could work. Some people prefer a deep niche in music. They can go for fusion jazz music. They can go for another sort of fusion or covers or different. It can work in art as well. So it really truly depends on the nature of your product and how it can be serviced. Take, for example, McDonald's still can, it probably doesn't use this entirely. They go for more of a undifferentiated marketing, but then they have smaller segment for children, for people who seek cheaper food, and for the casual eater. But from occasionally they take on new versions of different burgers. Came out with a vegan burger. They came out with a samurai burger when I was in Singapore. Oh, that was delicious. But it's just sometimes it is used. So you have to be careful that you don't create a very deep grain. It can be successful, but once again, correlated better with the market gap out there. Moving out to the next slide. Now, we are not going to cover business market, so I'm going to skip this slide, but I'm going to stick here for a while because I wanted to explain this to you. Just, if you remember pastel, it is exactly the same thing. Geographic location is for every region. When we look at a different geographic region, we do a pastel analysis, just like chapter number 3, which we also call the external audit. In that, we look at political factors, economic factors, social cultural trends, technological infrastructure, environment and sustainability, and of course the law. I've already explained this a lot, so I'm not going to go over it, but the reason for this is sometimes there are quite a lot of similarities in, I would say, the political climate of countries. Uh, when Donald Trump was being was running for president at that time, Brexit happened, and I try to correlate as much as possible to the impacts or the deep impacts it will have on the U.S. election. And I bet with some of my teachers and some of my students that Donald Trump will win. Now, I'm not an expert in these things, but somehow it felt that when I was reading the news, I said some of these pundits are off. Brexit will have a deep impact on the populist types of politicians. It also had an impact on France. Marine Le Pen, who got up to 35% of the popular vote, which is kind of dangerous if you see so. But this is kind of looking at a political climate that people are all over the world who are conservative by nature, they started popping up and voting. Economic factors is another thing that some countries could be well developed and they could buy the similar type of brands and products. And of course, we have talked about culture before in chapter 3 and chapter 5. So I'm not really going to cover all of this. Once again, it's very relevant to these chapters, and it's also healthy to use this as a very pertinent way to divide your market. Take, for example, France and Japan have one thing in common. Both have a big love for Japanese anime and manga. But France is France and Japan is Japan, but they have this subculture of things to do. Similarly, a culture could also be like something like video games or rap music. In nearly every part of the world, they have the rap in their own language, but rap originated from the US, flowed over to different countries, and voila, now you have a culture of rap music and people dress up as rap artists as well. Moving ahead. Now, what makes a segment that you're going to later probably select for a target market effective, or what's the best way to measure the effectiveness? There are 5 factors. Okay, I hope you should at least write this down. Maybe I might quiz you on this. Yeah, 5 of them: measurable, accessible, substantial, differentiable, and actionable. Uh, in truth, measurable just is a metric, meaning it can be taken in the sense that we can measure how much money we're going to make. Let's say we know the market size. The market size could be in total the industry is worth $60 billion. We hope to attain within 5 years, if we go after this, a certain segment in this market, let's say females between the ages 25 to 35, we probably hope to make 2 billion out of this market segment. So that's measurable. And those $2 billion, if you're making, will come from, let's say, 200 million women. So that's also measurable, the number of people. So you're able to measure the output you can get from this in terms of money, in terms of people, in terms of repeat customers. So it shouldn't be a vague number. It should be a well-defined number that comes from research. Number 2, the market should be accessible. When we say accessible, it means it can be reached and served well enough, meaning there's nothing blocking it out. They could be like political barriers. Some governments, they could have put sanctions on it, on a country, and then you're not allowed to do business with them. It could be other hurdles that disallow you, or block you out from doing business, such as slow internet speed or lack of trust in a system. For example, in Asian countries like mine, Pakistan or India, maybe they don't favor the iPhone that much, and they prefer Android phones because it's a cheaper version, and they don't have a distrust of the Mac product. They say it's expensive and it's just it's a fad. So that makes it not inaccessible, but it does block out, or I would say choke out or no, I wouldn't say choke out, I would say saturate the market too much, so your target market becomes inaccessible in a way. It should also be substantial. When we say the word substantial, that means you are going to gain a lot of money from this. You're going to gain profitability at a higher margin. If it's not going to yield a higher margin, you should really reconsider your marketing strategy. At the end of the day, you're in it for the money as well, not just because you're pursuing it for a passion, but it has to, if you don't make money out of a certain segment, you might consider downsizing that segment or going another direction. it should be differentiable as well, meaning look at the water bottles that you buy. Some are 1 liter, 1.5 liter, some are just half a liter or even less than that. The reason is the type of customer who buys it. If you're buying 1.5 liters to 2 liters, you're probably a family of 5 people or more. If you're buying 1 liter, you might be a couple, 2 people living together. And if you're buying a smaller bottle, you might be a commuter. So it's the same water bottle company is manufacturing different sizes because they feel there is a differentiable market segment for each of them. Lastly, it should be actionable. That means effective programs can be designed for attracting and serving the segment. If you're going to launch a marketing campaign, for example, brand awareness, communication, engagement, you're going to launch something for gaining more sales or increasing your market share, you're able to do that. So that's actionable. Maybe in some countries, for example, like India or Saudi Arabia, you can't make an advertising campaign for lingerie because it would be too explicit, and that's a great taboo. So that's not very actionable for you. So you have to really rethink your type of marketing campaigns you do there. So in general, when we say it's actionable, you can create a program, go after that campaign, and reach your market. So the previous four lead to the fifth action or factor as well. Moving to the next slide. Now, over here, I'm not going to talk too much because it's a simple theory. Intermarket segmentation involves creating different segment of consumers who have similar needs and buying behaviors, even though they're located in different countries. This happens. You don't have to change the product at all because it saves the served market. Let's talk about it this way. Uh, let's say Chinese people love eat, probably use medicine that involves ginseng roots. However, there are also Chinese people who live in Paris and they also live in the US, and that sort of community would like to have ginseng roots. So you can market it without changing the actual message because they know how to adapt to that sort of communication. So that's like an intermarket segmentation that we are selling the same product but to different regions. It works over here also in France and in the US and in India. Indian people in general eat what we call chapati, which is made from flour. And sometimes they put perforated butter, which we call ghee. But when it's marketed in different countries, they don't change the communication message. The only difference is that the regions are different, but the people are the same. That's just an example you can use. Of course, there are many others, but due to the time constraint ahead, and I don't want to exceed the video time, I would like to keep this short. What can I do? Let's move ahead. Now we're done with market segmentation. I'm pretty sure I deleted this slide. Why is it there? Well, shit happens. Let's move ahead to the next slide. We're talking about targeting this time. Okay. Now, how do you evaluate a segment and then go after it? First is the size and growth. When you say the size of the segment in terms of money and people, and growth is, has this segment been increasing over time, meaning more people are added to this segment, or in general, the value, which is monetary, has increased for this segment over time. Next is also the segmentation structure attractiveness. Is it easy for us to, I would say, market to them? And the last one being our own objectives and resources. I'll talk about this one by one. A target market is a set of buyers who share a common needs or characteristic that the company decides to serve. That is it. So you first go through segmentation and then you can pick up either one, two, or even three types of target markets to go after. It's just saying that I've selected a segment and I'm now going to design my marketing strategy against this segment. Next slide. So here's a little bit of, I would say, understanding the structural differences between them. We go from targeting broadly, which is undifferentiated mass marketing. Let me just highlight that. Why isn't this working? I keep clicking on the marker and no, it's not working. There's something weird about that. Let me try now. No, that's really bizarre. Yep, it's not working. Why? Okay, so undifferentiated marketing, and if you want to go target more narrowly, remove the homogeneity from it. You go for differential, and then there's differential if you have side segments. Then you can go to concentrated, which are more when we say concentrated, it means niche marketing. And then we have micro marketing. Micro marketing could be for local areas. When we say local area, it's not regional, and it's a bit regional, but it's more related to postal code of a place. And or could be individual marketing, like bespoke marketing, that is very much towards just one person, like buying suits or tailor-made suits, or buying tailor-made glasses, and those things. So moving ahead, let me explain each one briefly. Now, undifferentiated marketing is also known as mass marketing, meaning there are no segments. The offer or the offering provides the same value to any income level, any gender, any person with different levels of education. The focus is on common needs rather than what's different. And that means, for example, you want to buy rice, or you buy carrots or cucumbers, or I would say have tap water, or take a shower with tap water. I wouldn't say tap water, but bathroom water. Some people take long baths and they put bath salts in it. But at the end of the day, this sort of marketing applies mainly to, it's still somewhat segmented, but they say we don't really care. We sell this product to anyone who wants it, and we don't add any sort of gimmicks to it. Mainly can be used for staple foods like rice, flour, breads, for example, a baguette, right? Of course, some baguettes are differentiated, but in general, when you go to the bakery to buy baguette or pain, it's mainly just for one purpose, and it's to fill your stomach with bread and keep you filled. And it is essential as times to realize that some people wouldn't really care how different a product is to them as long as it serves a basic need. Now you can connect this to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or even the part when we did about needs, wants, and demand, that every time there's something very basic, all human beings, or even all plant-based life, all animal life, they not entirely all of them, except for maybe the ones that live on in under the sea, they require water or some sort of substance to survive. So in general, we all drink water. Of course, there's differentiated water too, but we can drink tap water. For some, you can drink filtered water, but at the end of the day, you need the essential things. So some things don't need to be marketed. They provide the benefit by just knowing that they're required. Moving ahead. Differentiated marketing, this is what we're studying in general, that we try to segment our market as best as possible, without heterogeneizing or without going into the grain too much. We don't like too much granular or too specific of a segment. Where, for example, shampoos can be for both men and female, but you can differentiate them according to, let's say, damaged hair, dry hair, frizzy hair, and those things. But that still makes it differentiated, but not a niche. So differentiated marketing targets several different market segments, design separate offers for each. The goal is to achieve a higher sales and stronger position. It is more expensive to conduct a differentiated marketing campaign, and also a plan for this. Just like for water bottles, if you have 1.5 liter water bottles, and you start producing half a liter water bottle, your cost will increase because your production will be increasing. You're producing the same type of plastic, I would say, container with plastic caps and more printout of the packaging for little amount of what's needed. Therefore, it is more expensive than undifferentiated marketing, because you also have to try to target with different messages to the different market segments. Moving ahead. Concentrated marketing, on the other hand, is for niche marketing. When we say niche marketing, it's a more, what's the word, granular segment, or let's say it targets a large uh, of a smaller market. Now, this is a confusing one. When it's a large or smaller market, it means you go deeper into your segment and see which one is still creates a homogeneous group in it. For example, it can also be beneficial for companies with limited resources. I know when I go teaching near Jardin de Luxembourg in this school, Over there, I saw a small corner shop that sells vegan hot dogs. Now, as disgusting as that sounds, it must be pretty good because it's been running for almost 2 years now, and it's got a lot of fanfare. So, but they don't have like everyone coming there, but they're strong enough to sustain themselves very profitably. That means it's targeting people who are vegan, which are not that many in general in a certain region, and it's a corner store, so I'm pretty sure they're so small they only have one table and chair for someone to sit outside. So imagine that comparing to McDonald's, it's not the same strength. So for these type of businesses, they need to have a very close knowledge of the market in terms of maybe knowing the community, maybe knowing very well about their community's habits and their behaviors. And it is entirely more effective and efficient, but you're not able to grab a large part of the market and you put a lot of effort into creating your idea. You can even charge a higher price because you are a rare business, and people who are looking for this sort of niche will seek you out and pay a higher price. Therefore, think about niche market as a very concentrated area where it's not very, it doesn't have a large market share or a large market standing, but the desire is out there to buy certain things like this so you can charge a higher price. Moving on, micro marketing. Now, micro marketing is a practice of tailoring products such as wedding dresses, tailored suits for men, and even marketing programs to suit the taste of specific individuals and location. For example, uh, let me talk about location marketing first. In different cities or neighborhood or different parts of the store, when if you're, let's say, in the suburbs, the quick burger in some Parisian suburbs, they're 100% halal. Halal is admissible or I would say allowable food or other sorts of practices in Islam, the religion of Muslims, which are allowed. So the quick burger is 100% halal in these regions, and I saw them. But when they're in Paris, they're not. So that's like a city or neighborhood thing. But even in stores, for example, if the sizes of the stores in Paris are smaller, like grocery stores or supermarkets. But excuse me, I was yawning. But when they're outside in the suburbs, they are larger and they have carry a variety of things with them. I've also noted when they are in Paris, these hypermarkets or mini markets, as they call them, they always have an assortment of sandwiches, salad, or ready-to-go food, along with drinks. Now they even offer pressed orange juice and sometimes even coffee, which is not the same thing when you go to a larger supermarket in the suburbs. They don't have these sort of offerings. They do sometimes. I mean, you don't have sandwiches and all, but they're not as customized as you will find them in the Paris region because it's more dense. Similarly, if you go to the Marais, you'll see a lot of what's the word? Hair salons, and people like to keep them prim and proper. But if you go to Gare du Nord area, the hair salons they're much more cheaper. They're like €8 for a haircut, and of course their hairstyling is not really above par. They're very subpar, but they cater to the needs of the people that live there. So it's really towards the locals, and or for example, if you go to the 6th of Paris, there are a lot of Chinese people in Belleville, for example, Belleville. There are a lot of Chinese people there, so you find a lot of Chinese food stores. Uh, if you go to La Chapelle, you find a lot of Indian food stores, and so on and so forth. Well, moving on to the next slide. And of course, there's individual marketing, one-to-one marketing, or what we call mass customization. I've already talked about like suits and wedding dresses, but what about mass customization? Now, that's a oxymoron that you are customizing your product for the masses. How's that possible? Well, there's the internet where that comes in digital marketing. Let's say when you're using the websites of different companies, you will see targeted ads towards your profile. When you're browsing let's say, for example, a site like maybe Amazon or Cdiscount, you might see an ad for traveling. But if I browse the same website, I will see ads for insurances because I'm in a different life cycle stage. My profile is different. For you, it could be seen for traveling or even for dating because you're at that stage of your life. Okay, so even on your Facebook or your Instagram, your news feeds are tailored towards your interests, and they're different from everyone else. You might see the same person's news feed, but they're not entirely the same. Everyone has different interests, and that's where mass customization come in for advertisement targeting, for I would say messages being sent out through social media. It makes your life much more easier for a marketer that way that they can find their specific niche to attract them. And it's also great for B2B marketing. For example, on LinkedIn, mainly is B2B marketing, when you're prospecting on LinkedIn. It's also social media, but it's a more professional one. Sometimes there are consultants looking to connect with you on the basis of what you do as a business. And they can send out messages when they're creating their message. The ad center can help them find their specific niche according to their demographic, and their messages will be tailor-made to them. Anyways, moving to the next slide. So now we're talking about market targeting, almost done with it. So we can choose a targeting strategy. First of all, it truly depends on the nature of the talent, money, capital, and other things that we have in a company. So we should never go after a target market that's, I would say, potentially out of reach or out of, but if it's out of our scope, and I would say we have to be realistic. We shouldn't go after that. For example, let's say I assume my target market sitting in Paris is also in Japan, but I don't have the money to market over there, nor I have an understanding of the culture or language. I should really rethink my strategy. Also, product variability. How can my product differ? Uh, let's say I make cornflakes, but I also make cereal snack bars out of the cornflakes. So it's a variable product. But then again, there are two different segments for that. Cornflakes is for the families, and snack bars could be, I would say, cereal bars can be for I would say, the person who hikes a lot, who goes out on mountain trails and things like that. And also product lifecycle stage. At what stage is the product at? Is it in this initial phase? So it must be for the innovators. Is it in the maturity phase? Then it can be for more casual people who understand the brand. Or if it's in the decline phase, it can be for laggards who go for discounted products. And so on and so forth. Like market variability, is the market very saturated or there's no competition? Is it a niche? Then you can redesign the segments accordingly. For example, McDonald's in the US is considered a very casual fast food. In France, it's not considered the same. It has repositioned itself as being more of a family restaurant. So the market here is different because most people don't like fast food over here, even though it shows contrary. But there are very good restaurants in Paris, and people like the fine dining experience in a cheaper format. And of course, the competitive marketing strategy. How does a competition position itself against you? Let's say, for example, there is what do you call Audi and BMW, but Teslas are priced higher, and they want the latest Tesla S3, I think, is priced close to a BMW or an Audi because it wants to compete with them, but it's an electric car competing with a diesel or petrol engine car. So that's also a competitive market strategy. Moving to the next slide. I will not cover this, okay? Socially responsible target marketing because you have a class on business ethics, so no, I'm not covering this. Now, from here onwards, I'm going to talk about positioning and differentiation. So we need to pay attention a lot. So I'm just going to, oh, okay. Product position is the way the product is defined, or the service, or even the idea is defined by consumers on important attributes, meaning what is important to that target market. And for example, IKEA can mean a lot of things. It can mean furniture that is inexpensive, furniture that requires assembly can be complicated, furniture that can be very disposable, or furniture you can get for any sort of need, want. For different people, it means different things, and IKEA is very popular with that because it's all about personalization as well. So IKEA can have that message. Well, however, what marketers do, they create perceptual maps. Okay, uh, perceptual maps once again. Uh, you take two attributes. such as maybe pricing or orientation. But usually we always take pricing, and orientation is towards the nature of the industry. Just give me a second, please. Now, there's a little trouble I have. I can't use the pen over here. But position navs, once again, the word here is perception. It's not true reality. And I don't know whether I taught you guys this in class now. Sometimes just coming back to me because it gets confusing. I'm teaching like 4 different classes of marketing, and every time I have to come back to this. Oh, well, if I have to redo it, I'll teach you another topic, but I'll confirm again with your class reps. So I taught that in the other class. Yeah, it was another school. Perception maps, once again, is based on orientations. Orientations such as, let's say, for example, a car. According to you, how much should a Mercedes-Benz cost? Should it be, let's range it up from $40,000 to $100,000. Where do you think it will lie? At the lowest price and the highest price? According to you, a Mercedes-Benz, is it a luxurious car, or is it more of a sports type car? Or is it a basic car? So you can define the orientation when you're talking about competition. So the reason we create position maps for different brands is we want to see how people think about them. How would you compare a Porsche Boxer 911 to a Ferrari uh, F50 whatever, or to a McLaren, to a Lamborghini? But once again, perception is not reality. We just want to know what you think. And when customers mention what they think, you start to, I would say, focus on their perception. Maybe sometimes even shift their perception to maybe a higher plane or lower one. This was a big debate for Porsche when they launched their Porsche Cayenne, and a lot of marketers and branders said that was a huge mistake because people didn't think about that. But maybe, Porsche took the risk. And ironically enough, people started buying the Porsche Cayenne because it wasn't significantly priced much more different or higher than the Porsche 911. In fact, it was sometimes priced almost similarly, or I think sometimes even lower. So everyone who ever dreamt of owning a Porsche 911 and thought it was out of their range, say I can get a sports utility vehicle, and to be honest, Porsche's Cayenne is not really a sports car, but even though it can seem to behave like one. So marketers and branders said it's not the real thing and it's taking away, or I would say cannibalizing the real brand. So the perception was pretty poor. Well, people bought it, but for them the perception was, hey, it's the Porsche brand but cheaper. Just like the iPhone when it came out, it was supposed to be a premium product. When it's a premium product and it couldn't be sold pretty well in India and China because people thought their perception of the product was too expensive. They launched the iPhone 5C to target the BRICS market with a lower price, so therefore people's perception was, now this is giving me value for my money. Anyways, move to the next slide. Now, most difficult part comes when you have to actually choose a specific strategy of attracting your target market because you have to match their mindset and make it related or relative to your product and services, or I would say just the idea behind it. So first thing you have to do is identify a set of possible competitive advantages to build a position. That means why should I select your brand over someone else? What makes you better? It doesn't have to be a real claim. It can also be a false claim, such as just the strength of the brand. It can also mean it can have emotional values too. I'm sorry, I think I just burped into the microphone. I was having a lot of diarrhea. Anyways, choosing the right competitive advantages is also very difficult because in marketing, remember, we always use one offer, not two, not three. Our brand has to provide us one significant competitive advantage, not two, not three, not four, not five. Because if you give too many advantages, it will sound like bullshit. It's too good to be true, and it is also confuses the person who is about to acquire your brand. It said, if it does everything, then maybe I don't think so is that realistic. That's why look at Apple. Apple usually focuses for their iPhone on lifestyle. Samsung Android phones have always focused on functionality, but Samsung has the brand has become very diluted because they offer too many brands. But initially, when the Galaxy Note came out, it was competing headstrong against the iPhones, and they said we are about functionality. We offer different options that the iPhone doesn't. But iPhone never said that. iPhone said, well, recently it does. We came up with the face recognition. It came up with virtual emojis or something like that. But its idea was not to, what's the word, focus on the functionality, but the lifestyle that it would offer to someone. Then we have to select an overall positioning strategy, which I'll explain in a while. You might be quizzed on the positioning strategy, that is more for less, and those things, and how we communicate our position or positioning statement to the current market that we're going after. Let me show you what is first a competitive advantage. Is any sort of feature or element in your product or service that you have an advantage that creates an advantage over your competitors, and it's gained by offering consumers greater value, either through, like for example, lowering the price, or I wouldn't say the word price. I would always say the word lowering the cost of acquisition, lowering the cost of usage, lowering the cost of evaluation, and all those things, or by providing more benefits that are justified by higher price. So if you lower the price of something, you might also lower the value. And it's okay because someone says, I'm buying a cheaper phone. I got a cheaper Asus, and I'm okay with it. It's not the fastest phone out there. It's not very robust, but for the price I paid, I think it's justified. But some people would buy an expensive Galaxy Note or they'll buy an expensive iPhone. But for them, it will provide them with faster speed, higher resolution cameras, better sound quality, better reception, and therefore the benefits they've attained and for the cost they gave up with, they say it's worth the value that I'm paying for. Moving ahead. So the different types of, I would say, competitive advantages can come from the product attributes itself. Okay, maybe it can also come from the services that you provide. Maybe it can come from the types of channels you're giving through. Are you providing your services or products through an online medium? Are you giving directly through your store? If you go to the Apple store, it's designed very beautifully. If you go to the Lamborghini store in Dubai, it looks very unique. If you go to Abercrombie and Fitch, it has its uniqueness. If you go to McDonald's, it's a product service together, but the channel is McDonald's itself, it can be the franchise. You won't find McDonald's anywhere else other than its own franchise. But if you want to buy Starbucks coffee, you can go to Starbucks coffee, or sometimes you'll find Starbucks cold coffees available even in supermarkets. That's possible too. And how do you want the people to represent your brand? For example, Nike uses sports stars. Sports celebrities represent as brands. Maybe Tom's Shoes does not do the same thing. And Skechers also creates sports shoes, but they don't endorse any sort of celebrities, as far as I know, because they're not considered a very high-end brand. They're a basic brand. They're very comfortable shoes, but they're not that expensive. They cost almost one-third the price of a Nike or Adidas sport running shoe. And then lastly, what sort of image do you want to create in the minds and hearts of people? Nike running shoes are considered very premium, but they're not entirely, I would say they are somewhat functional, but not entirely highly functional and overpowered like Asics shoes. Asics are Japanese. Their focus is not on aesthetics or beauty. Their focus is on functionality. They're superior in terms of gel cushioning and comfort and running. So that's an image you want to produce in someone's mind when you think about, let's say, having a vacation in Bali. You think about sun, the sand, the beaches, the delicious food. When you want to have a vacation in Iceland, you think about the beautiful landscape. You think about it's an isolated place. It's very calm and tranquil. It's different altogether. When you think about going for a party with friends, you have an image of going to a club where there's loud noises and probably a lot of drugs for you guys to do as well. I don't do drugs, so I want to know, and I don't go to clubs. So but there's just an image in my mind that every time people go to a club, they get into trouble. Moving ahead. Now, once again, you can there are several ways to promote a competitive advantage. Focus on an element, but you should always focus on an element comparing to a customer segment according to your research. What does your customer segment find important in your product? Is it the pricing? Is it a certain feature? Is it the way it's promoted, communicated to them? Or is it easier for them to find? So whatever is important, that important factor should also be very distinctive, meaning it must be very unique and it must stand out in against the competition, meaning it has to have a superior position. Now think about Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Both essentially are the same thing in the industry, but for someone, it could be just the logo, or it could be just the brand loyalty they have with Coca-Cola over Pepsi that they find it more superior. It doesn't really have to be the taste anymore. It's just that I prefer Coca-Cola over Pepsi because XYZ. But that's for market research. Customers don't entirely aren't sure of that. And that sort of, I would say, element has to be communicable, meaning you are can communicate the benefit against the competition with greater value in terms of perception to the target market. So if you look at a brand like Coca-Cola, they always say, yes, ironically, I know I'm going to say the word again, they always say always Coca-Cola. Or sometimes they say food always tastes best with Coca-Cola. So it's about the moments in life that you have. And whereas Pepsi says Pepsi Generation is about all the cool kids, it's about the cool sports stars, celebrities. They use Britney Spears, Beyonce, and I don't know, Pink for the advertisement they created some time back with the song "We Will Rock You." They're dressed as female gladiators. So they were using very contemporary pop stars, were very popular with the youth, to promote their brand. Whereas Coca-Cola, it's very generational. It's something more to do with culture and history that keeps on going. It also has to be what we say the element that you want to use to strike against a competition has to be very preemptive, and you have to be the first to do it. Take for example, MP3 players came out before the iPod, but the iPod became very distinct and unique because they started using white headphones, and it set them apart because you never know what people are listening to, or they have an MP3 player hidden in their pocket. So many people couldn't see the iPod, but what they could see were the distinct white headphones because at that time, majority of the headphones were being produced were just lazy black. That's the same with laptops. Laptops were just black color, like from IBM or whatever, Toshiba, HP, and Apple started coming out with colorful laptops. Even till this day, Apple has their gray and white. I would say the white light that comes out from the Apple logo, whereas most of them still black or whatever color they are. So it was a preemptive thing to do. And sometimes it's also on the level of affordability. Now, affordability does not mean cheap. Affordability means is acquiring a product and using it. Is it affordable to that target segment? If I'm pitching it outside of their range or even way below their range, there's something wrong. Okay, so if they wish to acquire it, it should be in an affordable range. But sometimes it can be outside of the range, but they can acquire it through, I would say, installments. Let's say when you have to buy a house or an apartment in a certain area, people usually go for a loan. But when they go for a loan, they know that they can afford to acquire that loan, like a mortgage or car loan or a micro loan, and then they can pay it off through interest. Lastly, that advantage that you create should be profitable for the company. Because if you're going to create a whole marketing message around it and it doesn't pay you off, you're going to have problems. Just look at the positioning of McDonald's. They used Justin Timberlake to sing the song I'm Loving It. They used Pusha T to write that song, and yeah, the jingle was a big success. So the message when went out was pa 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 pa, I'm loving it. It became a profitable message for McDonald's. It repositioned them as a different type of company. It wasn't just a fast food anymore. It became a way of life that people said, "Hey, I would love me some McNuggets." Now, I've never heard anyone refuse McNuggets or McFries. Okay, like the girls say all the time. Girls always say, what do they say? Fries before guys. And that's really sexist. I apologize. Please don't sue me for that. Moving ahead. Okay, this diagram is super important. Please note it down because I might quiz you on this. It's called the overall positioning strategy. I mentioned it before. So when you're selecting a value proposition, understand that people always think in terms of benefits and cost. Uh, Here's a few examples. You can you see the part that's on blue. That's what you should always do in terms of positioning. Uh, you should offer more benefits if someone's giving up more of their efforts to acquire you. The iPhone is a very expensive phone, okay? But people, they say when I'm buying it, I'm receiving a lot of benefits such as FaceTime, such as facial recognition. They said I get high resolution photographs, the processor is really fast, etc., etc. So I'm paying more money, but in return, I'm getting a lot more benefits. The second thing you can do is more for the same. Now, more for the same is more like Samsung. The same means the price is at not at a premium level, but lower than premium, so it's a basic. However, I'm acquiring more benefits or just as same benefits as an iPhone. So when I bought a Galaxy Note, I got the same benefits as the iPhone, but I paid slightly less, maybe 100 euros less, maybe 150 euros less. So I'm in the same level of a basic, more basic, I would say, or less pricey iPhone, but I get the same benefits as one. Zara kind of does the same with more for less in a way. Zara copies what do you call it? Luxury fashion and prices it at fast fashion. So people who buy fast fashion goods from Zara, they say it feels like I'm wearing luxurious product. Even though it's high street, it feels like you're wearing high-end products. So they pay less, which is they pay a very basic fees for acquiring that product, but they feel like $1 million. But you can do the same for less as well, meaning you can acquire less benefits. You can go to, let's say, H&M, and you get less benefits. It's not the same thing as Zara, but it's almost for the same price. We are not very different. Or let's say Mango. They're slightly priced below. Zara is priced a little higher, but the benefit that you get from Zara is not the same as Mango or H&M. Okay, they're more casual, or I would say semi-casual, but not very formal or not very chic. But once again, it's just a perception. I'm just giving an example. There are hundreds of out there. The last one is less for much less is when you probably go to Primark. Now, I go to Primark to buy a lot of kids' clothes because my kids grow up and I don't want to pay like a boatload of money for them. And so sometimes people buy discounted products or cheap products because they say the value we get from it is not that high. Let's say when you buy a pen, a pencil, a toothbrush, you might not be focused too much on the how big of a benefit it can give you. So you say, I won't give too much money for it. Uh, or let's say when you buy water, some people are focused on buying expensive water like Wattwiller or even Perrier, San Pellegrino, even Evian is expensive, but there are brands that are much cheaper like Volvic or even getting, I think what was it called, Crystalline. Crystalline is less expensive, it's a more basic version, as one of the most basic versions out there. But they say, well, you know what, it may have nitrates and other things or higher in salt content, but so what? I'm paying less and I don't care for the additional benefits. But never ever do the red part, the center part, the neutral part, you can do the green part. But don't ever try to cheat your customer by giving lower benefits according to their perception and a higher cost according to their perception. That's when a customer gets turned off. Okay? Um, these are what we call losing value propositions. People feel cheated if you charge them a high price and they feel the quality is poor, they feel the benefit they're receiving from it is very poor. Well, once again, do not confuse the word perception with reality. Because in some people's reality, uh, you know, something that doesn't give them benefit still has a high value. For example, the company Supreme, they sold a brick. I'm not joking, a brick with the word Supreme written on it for $32, and people bought it. They stood outside on a line to buy that brick with Supreme's logos on it, and they went and sold it on eBay for $1,000. Yes, my friends, a brick. Yes, I'm just as embarrassed, but I'm part of that generation too. What can I say? Moving ahead. Okay, this part we really don't have to do. Okay, the positioning statement. Once I'm skipping this. Blah, blah, blah. I'm skipping this as well, but I'll teach a little bit of this in class. And how do we choose to deliver our position? To be honest, the communication part will come in the other chapter of promotion, which are divided into 4 or 5 chapters, which is PR, sales promotion, personal selling, direct marketing, advertising. So that's when we start to real communicate our message. So choosing position is often easier than implementing it. So, and we have to establish a position, or changing one usually takes a long time. You know, Apple's gone from being an affordable computer to an expensive one, from giving you freedom to locking you in. And that's very ironic, but their positioning statements change all the time. Within a few, it also has to match the demographics and the psychographics of the people who are loyal to your brand. So maintaining the position requires consistent performance and communication. Once again, over time, the positioning statements can change. Sometimes they remain the same over many, many years. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll be giving you the assignment later. I don't want to burden you guys with too much work. I think we're at that phase when you guys are doing your midterms. So I would like to relax the effort that's required in the class at the moment. Once again, my apologies, my deepest apologies for not being able to do the content properly. Um, what can I say? Sometimes technology fails you. With that, I bid you adieu and see you soon, guys. Bye-bye.